and nice words. Yeah, I'm very very honored to be here.
Oh, no
So
worries. So yeah, as like we're just going to sort of just go over just some very, nothing too intense, just a few sort of, getting to know you and what you do, and maybe you can impart, some pearls of wisdom for the audience out there. But we'll start nice and easy, just, something to break the ice. A good question is, out of all the instruments out there that you could have chosen, why the saxophone? What was the thing that gravitated you towards the saxophone?
well, I started on clarinet, and I loved playing clarinet. I was, I think, 9 when I started playing clarinet, and it was cool for a long time till I was about 13, and then the clarinet was kind of, yeah, it was. I still liked playing it, but then my uncle, who inspired me to play the clarinet in the first place, had a saxophone lying around. It was a tenor saxophone, and I played a few notes on it, and it was love at first sight, I would say. I just went, this is this is just great. And then when I was 14, I had a girlfriend, and she decided to start saxophone. So she had an alto. This is like probably a few months later, and I picked it up, and I think I forgot that she was in the room for 2 hours, and I was in a lot of trouble. And I knew I wanted to have a saxophone, and that was it. And yeah, and it's always been, I think, my favorite instrument since. So yeah.
Nice one. So you kind of fell into it almost. So yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
Now you're obviously you're not originally from Sydney. You're actually originally from Germany, and that's sort of where your musical journey began. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your sort of a little bit more about those early musical experiences, some training, and just sort of all those things sort of leading up to your arrival in Australia. I also understand that you undertook a degree in classical music originally.
Well, yeah. I mean, I started playing in a community band, so it was basically a wind band. Um, Learned a lot of stuff there, and then when I was about 15, 16, I decided that I I wanted to know more and went to the con with my saxophone. I had think I had learned some furling etude or something, and marched into the con to the teacher there and said, I want to do a part-time study thing because we had this option to study part-time and get free lessons at the con. And he had to listen to me and said, okay, have a have a few lessons with this guy, come back in half a year and do the audition. And that's how I got in. And it was a classical it was a classical course. So I studied part time for 2 years, like just basically just got lessons from this guy. It was Gunter Priesner in Nuremberg,
Hmm.
and I fell so much in love with the whole classical thing and the playing, and I learned heaps, and I decided that I'm going to study music. So, and then I did my degree in classical music in Germany. I basically did a master's there in classical saxophone.
Wow.
And the funny thing was, I mean, I was always in love with jazz, obviously, and I thought there was no jazz course, and I thought, well, this is great. This is still playing saxophone, and then I really enjoyed it, and yeah, and I played jazz at the same time, obviously on the side badly,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah. So that's how it worked.
Okay. I think you're being a little bit humble there, because when you were undertaking your studies, I believe it's in Nuremberg. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. You actually had uh, you were actually placed third in the prestigious national music competition there as well. So uh, that was the my pronunciation is very terrible with German, so I apologise. The Juden musiziert.
Jugend musiziert, which means
Okay.
youth is playing music. That's what
Okay.
it means. It's a pretty big competition, yeah. And the funny thing was, I decided to enter because because I already knew that I might go to Australia, and I
Hmm.
thought it might be good to get some credibility under my belt. So I entered this competition.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess I was because I started so young with that teacher. I was pretty advanced at that stage with my classical playing, and yeah, seemed to do well in that competition.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice. Now, as you said, you like while you were studying, you also worked and gigged as a jazz in like various jazz groups and sort of various rock bands, Latin bands, funk bands, show bands, theatre bands. Like the list sort of goes on and on. So,
Yeah.
how did you like just with all those sort of different hats that you had going on there? How did you sort of like initially start juggling all those sorts of things? Like surely you just would have had a bit of a musical identity crisis from time to time.
It's kind of it's interesting that you say that. Yeah, I actually never felt that. I mean, I definitely was for a long time sort of jack of all trades, try to learn things, and as you do. But I think I always loved so many varieties of music that that didn't really irritate me. That was interesting. It still is like that. I mean, I listen to so many different things and I enjoy pretty much everything. So if it's good music, so yeah, I think I like the variety of doing everything a little bit. And maybe I'm still jack of all trades. I don't know.
No, that's cool. So yeah, just sort of, I think yeah, as you pointed out there, probably one of the important things is having that sort of passion for all styles, and that sort of makes a real difference for sure in that regard. Now you moved to Australia in just checking my notes, 1994, and when you came here, just sort of curious because coming to a different country, sort of the differences in the gig scene from Germany to Australia probably would have been a little bit of a stark contrast to probably what you're used to. So just maybe you could talk us through, like, sort of when you first came here, sort of how did you find those differences, and also how did you sort of get your sort of foot in the door into the gig scene, and like how did you sort of get to network with people, and sort of what was your method with that? Did you have someone to introduce you, or was it just sort of going to the jams, or yeah?
Okay. Yeah, so obviously, I mean, in Germany, I had a lot of connections because I went through the con there. So there was a lot of work for me. The money back in the day was really good too in the 90s. So I left a pretty good scene, I must say, playing wise, and I plonked down here and thought, okay. And I didn't actually work much for the first half year. I hardly worked at all, and I got pretty depressed with the whole thing because I thought, wow, like, what have I done to myself? In terms of starting to get gigs, yeah, I just tried to turn up everywhere, sat in with people, went to jams. Just, I mean, back in the day, there was a magazine called Drum Media that had advertising for looking for saxophone player. There was a lot of very horrible work out there. Okay, I had a few people that I knew here, so they started giving me some work, and I must say it probably took a good 2 years to get really into some better playing and some better gigs. I mean, I had work and it built up. I started teaching after half a year at Shaw Grammar, and then I got some connections through there, through other teachers, and that sort of, and then it started snowballing after that to get enough work.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a slow process. It takes time.
Yeah, for sure, and persistence, of course. Do you have like, obviously, today there's people in the same boat, trying to make it in the scene and things like that. Do you think that's a similar process today for like young saxophone players looking to get a foot in the door in the gig scene? Like, do you think that's still an important thing, like just sort of showing your face, turning up to things, talking to people? Do you think that's still the way to go?
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely essential. I think, I mean, as you know, like you would book someone that you meet. There's a personality thing. There's obviously the playing, but then you kind of go, oh, this guy's, you click with him, and I think it's the big thing. You just got to do the groundwork and the footwork, and meet people. Yeah, for sure. And I see young players doing that. I mean, they're all out there, and I admire the energy because I think I should be out there more than quite often. You just go, oh, okay, So it's good. I think it's great. I mean, and it's great when you get out and play, and yeah, it's definitely the way to do it, I think.
Yeah, cool. Now, you've certainly gone out there and played more than your fair share. Like the list of players that you've worked with is absolutely phenomenal. Like you've got both the Morrison brothers, Emma Pask, Don Burrows, George Golla, Monica Trapaga, Sydney Symphony. Not only that, but you have a rap sheet longer than my forearm of shows that you've worked on as well. Could be a tough one, but what would you say were some performance highlights for you that you can recall, and what sort of made them stand out out of, say, most of the other gigs that you do? Like, so what sort of made those sort of really memorable performances for you?
Okay, the last one that I remember was playing with Basement Jacks. There was a big tour we did, and it was just a vibe. It was phenomenal, and there was some great players from the scene. Loretta Palmieri was on the gig, and Steve Fitzmaurice and Abby McCoon, and it was a fun gig in terms of personalities, and it was musically a really, really fun gig because it was electronic music reorchestrated without electronics. So it was quite challenging. I actually had to play clarinet for that one. I had a pretty intense thing there, and then had some nice solo stuff. And we did the Opera House, and we played in Melbourne at the big, I can't remember what the place was called. Anyway, that was a fun one. I did. I think I very fondly remember my CD launch, because that was very different to everything else I did, because it was my own music. So I remember it was very nerve-wracking and exciting at the same time. And I haven't really done much with that since. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, so that was the album Time Travel, released in 2007, right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a long time ago. I was young and motivated to write music back then, and then the commercial thing, and I just had young kids at the time, and I started getting a lot of good playing gigs, and I thought, should do those. And before I knew it, the CD and the original thing kind of disappeared, which I kind of hope to at some day pick up again. My kids are old now, so yeah.
Well, maybe it's time for a second follow-up, maybe. But,
I'm thinking about it at the moment. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, going back, so not only are you an amazing performer, but you're also quite an amazing educator as well. Currently, you're at Sydney Grammar School, I believe, and a few other places, and you do a lot of guest tutoring, things like that. Just in terms of your background, because you do have such a varied and diverse sort of background in terms of the music that you've studied and your knowledge of a wide array of styles, sort of how does that impact on your sort of teaching philosophy? So like when you're teaching not necessarily a beginner, but say a more intermediate to advanced level student, do you try and share that diverse musical experience with those students, or is it sort of like a case by case thing, or like what's your ideal sort of teaching philosophy in that regard?
Well, I think first and foremost, I always hope that I inspire students enough to loving playing as much as I do. I firmly believe that, everything which you probably think as well, like it has to come from the student himself or herself to wanting to play and be hungry and say, I really want to learn this instrument, and I love playing it, and show me stuff. And then, I'm trying to introduce my students to various things, and some love playing classical stuff, and I'm very happily do that with them. And others really say, I want to learn how to improvise. I really like to play jazz or do a pop thing, or how do you do that? I like when students ask me questions, but it is definitely case by case. I show them things, and then when they go, I really don't like that music, then I go, okay, let's do something different. But I also trying to get them to listen to a lot of things. So check out this player, check out this music, because I think that's where you get all your inspiration. I mean, listening to other great players and say, I want to learn how to play like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it works for me.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, cool. No, that's great. Now, obviously, COVID-19 is the hot topic at the moment, and it's affected all of us in various ways, and particularly musicians. The shutting down of the live music scene, and teaching becoming impossible as well, and a whole bunch of other things as well. How has it sort of affected you at the moment, and have you felt like you've had to adapt, and if so, how have you adapted, and is there any sort of words of wisdom on people out there who are trying to get through this time, I guess?
Okay. Work-wise, I've certainly lost heaps of work. I mean, I have had a lot of gigs lined up. There was a tour that I was meant to do, so that all fell apart, which I haven't really recovered from. As in, I had one gig 2 weeks ago, and I've got one in the book for November, so that's it. I've been doing the online teaching, the Zoom thing. That's been successful. As we know, it's very intense and draining, but I'm very grateful that we actually can do it. So there's that. In terms of wisdom, I think the smartest thing one can do at the moment is just work on things that you normally don't work on, or find projects. As I said, like writing, or for me at the moment, I'm practicing my doubles a lot. I do a lot of flute and clarinet playing because I normally neglect that unless I have a show and I need to play it. I tend to go off, when there's no time for that or not enough time. So at the moment, I'm trying to start my day with flute practice. So it's fun, Then I do saxophone, and then I play some clarinet at the end. And I just think there's time, so I'm trying to use that as much as I can.
Yes.
Hopefully to use it at some stage again,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like during this quiet time, like everyone's doing different things, but as you say, a lot of people are like yourself. Spending the time just to work on themselves in terms of practicing things, or visiting long neglected projects that they've been putting off for ages and then coming back to. So yeah, no, that's good. Okay, so a bit of a speed question, speed round. If you only had 10 minutes in a day to practice, what would you practice and why?
If I have 10 minutes, I most likely, if I'm working on something, I most likely will pick a really hard bar or two bars that I, think I could just go through them really, really slowly and just do intense, 5 minutes on something that I really can't play. If I'm in a concentrated enough mindset. If not, I might just have fun, play a standard, and just sort of noodle around a bit, and or I go through a technical thing. It's funny. Like I probably wouldn't. I don't know if I've ever practiced for 10 minutes. I find if I start 10 minutes, then I keep playing. So, but I quite often con myself into practicing by just picking it up and going, I'm just going to muck around. That kind of works for me. Sometimes I just can't bring myself to sit down and go and be disciplined and start my technical routine or my normal warm-ups, and I go, and quite often that entices me to then do some real work
later on. So I mean, hypothetically, if you had a student who was like 10 minutes late or something, then that would sort of be what you do. Just sort of pick it up, have a play for yourself, and then in the back of your mind think, oh, maybe I can work on that, come back to it later.
If a student doesn't, what I really love doing is when I learn a new phrase, new line through a 2-5-1 progression, or transcribe something new. I'm always trying to do them through all keys. So that's something that I really enjoy doing when students don't turn up and go, I just work on this and see how far I get. That sort of thing.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, Stephan, that brings us to the end of the questionnaire. Hopefully it wasn't too painful for you. Again, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me,
No, it's an absolute pleasure. if there's any, obviously, you know, there's some, it's a bit quiet at the moment now, but, you know, when things start firing up again, I'm sure we'll be seeing you out there gigging, whatnot. Is there any particular projects or anything at the moment that we should keep an eye out for on the horizon, or?
Not really. As I said, like it's super quiet for me. I mean, I'm hoping to. There's one band that I haven't worked with for a long time called Petulant Frenzy, which is a Frank Zappa band, which I really enjoy playing. So I hope we do something when things start again. Yeah, I haven't really got anything on the back burner. As I said, I'm trying to write some stuff, so hopefully I get motivated enough. I started and nothing really great has happened yet. So,
Well, you know, it just you persevere with it, and one day it's sort of like, you know, Newton with the apple on the head. You never know.
yeah.
Just we have a question in the gallery here.
Yeah.
It says here, when do you decide to move a student onto a pro level mouthpiece, and do you think there are mouthpieces that are good all rounders?
It's a good question. Yeah. I tend to have a lot of students playing, as we know, on those Yamaha 4Cs, and if they're really keen, I'll probably decide by what they really want to do. So if they want to do something classical, I've recently acquired a classical mouthpiece, and Jay knows that because I asked him about asked him for some advice, and I love what he advised, and so I probably would tell them get that because this is great, plays great. I've asked you about a tenor student for classical mouthpiece because I'm not very smart about that. An all rounder, I mean, I think it's really tricky. I guess for an alto, the Myers always seem to be coming up, but I guess soon you go more open tip. It's hard to play classical stuff on it, so. I always recommend to get hard rubber mouthpieces, and normally not too big tip openings when students first get into jazz. Even if they get a jazz mouthpiece, I say like get a Jody Jazz, but get like a 6 or 7 maximum. Don't go big mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Big tip opening. You can do that later if you feel like that. But yeah, I guess. If students are serious, I try to move them along and say, hey, you're doing really great. You should probably consider getting a better mouthpiece because you're practicing and you benefit from it. So I probably depends how, when maybe they get to level 4, like grade 4, grade 5 kind of playing, I go, get a better mouthpiece. Yeah.
And you can see them sort of sticking with the instrument for the long term. So make sure they're set up nicely. All right, cool. Any other questions from the gallery? Nope, there goes the tumbleweeds. All right, no worries. Well, Steph, thank you very much again for your time. As I said, it's been a really insightful bit of a Q&A for us, just learning about yourself and what you do. And look, I'm sure we will hear much more from you down the track in terms of what you're up to and what you're playing. So again, thank you very much for taking the time out to have a chat to us. And next week we have another special guest all the way from the Central Coast, but he's a resident in Sydney, Dr. Michael Duke, who is the Associate Professor of Classical Saxophone at the Sydney Conservatorium. So please feel free to tune in next week for that segment of the Q&A session.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sorry, one other question before we go. Question from Melbourne says, where can we get a hold of your album or any of your other recordings, Steph?
There's some YouTube stuff, I think, when you Google me. The album, I don't even know if it's still in distribution, but Niels, I'm happy to send you one free of cost because I've got truckloads of them. So I'd be very happy to pass that to send you that.
Cool. All right.
So,
you guys can certainly have a chat after this and work it out. But we'll just certainly have a Google and see if that time travel album's still floating around.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much again, and anyway, everyone, stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Good.